show us that that's the right approach, not this, let's start closing down departments to some degree the way Project 2025 wants to do.
In this video, David Pakman debates conservative radio host Tony Kinnett on C-SPAN. The topic discussed in this clip by David Pakman and Tony Kinnett is our country's broken school system. With that, let's watch David Pakman do his darndest to defend the bureaucratic mess that are the United States academic institutions.
To be scared, but it's a question that I certainly don't have the answer to.
Tony, part of this Harvard youth poll says that confidence in public institutions continues to decline among young people. What do you think needs to happen to turn that around?
Well, a few things. Number one, these public institutions that have taken the trust of Americans and thrown it away need to be reevaluated in the amount of power that they hold. They need to be reevaluated in the structure with the unelected bureaucrats that staff a lot of these institutions. For example,
I was going to say, give us an example of.
Right. So, for example, in my field, the Department of Education, which has governed by fiat over the last several decades, quite honestly, that has basically written all of these very weird and not scientifically backed rules as far as academia and education is concerned for states to receive education funding, that creates, quite honestly, a spaghetti bowl of laws and regulations that intertwine with each other and create a large mess. So when the system goes wrong and creates some type of backdoor regulatory flag that you have to jump hoops through, you lose a lot of trust in that institution. And so there needs to be a reevaluation of this fourth branch of the government, this administrative state, this Wilsonian idea that has been an abysmal failure in the United States.
And David,
if you like watching videos like this one, like and subscribe. We'd really appreciate it. Let's get back to the video.
Your thoughts on that, your reaction?
Yeah, I don't. It won't shock you that I have a sort of different perspective than Tony generally as far as institutions go. I think that if we zoom way out, and I know that this is not the sexiest conversation, if we zoom way out at a very basic level, the larger society gets, the more we need to some degree, have institutions and institutions to which we can delegate some authority. And unfortunately, if you don't have that, what you have is a non-functional society. And so my preference would be that we actually properly fund our institutions with the right amount of oversight. I mean, I'm the last person to say, hey, take some money, go do whatever, and let's talk to you in 15 or 20 years. But when it comes to the Department of Education or FDA or whatever institution, I think the only way forward as far as anthropology and group psychology and sociology and all of these sciences take us is we need these institutions, but we need proper and correct oversight. They need to be adequately funded. And that's really the starting point for what are the most successful countries and ways of organizing ourselves. I know it's very top level, but I think starting from a point of taking away power for the sake of taking it, or defunding for the sake of defunding, or, you know, Rick Perry just listing off departments famously and forgetting which ones that they were that he wanted to eliminate. I think it's backwards. And I think the global successes, the countries with the best business environments and the highest standards of living, show us that that's the right approach, not this, let's start closing down departments to some degree the way Project 2025 wants to do.
So the question that I would have for you is that in the same branch of concern that the executive branch of the United States is increasing its amount of authority unilaterally, that you would also increase the amount of authority with the executive branch through these bureaucratic organizations that answer to the executive branch? What authority needs to be delegated?
That's not at all what I said. No, certainly not. But my point, as I mentioned, was a broader one. Certainly nothing in what I said is give the president as an individual more power. And in fact, if we learned anything during the Trump presidency, it's that a lot of people...
Isn't David Pakman just like a serial contrarian? I don't know anyone aside from bureaucrats or school administrators, teachers that benefit from our broken school system right now that wouldn't agree that we've got a huge problem. I'm not looking at the statistics, but I know that there are large numbers of children at every grade level that can't read or do math at their grade level. But we're focused on telling them they can, change their genders and all that stuff. And then if they move on to college, since all that stuff's been implanted in their brains, they don't want to learn about math and English, business. They want to learn about lesbian dance theory. So we're doing our kids such a disservice. I also feel like one of the points Tony Kinnett made, he mentioned unelected officials. I feel like in these big bureaucratic, jump through tons of hoops, departments or institutions in our country, when you sift through everything, you usually end up with one of the big problems being that these are unelected bureaucrats with zero obligation to the people that they represent, in this case, children and their parents, and much more of an allegiance to their peers and coworkers. So I'm about the biggest proponent there is for the voucher program, which I don't know why every American wouldn't be, but I'll see if they get to that. If not, I'll make a quick comment on that. Anyway, let's get back to the video.
People on the left came around to what some on the right believed, which was, hey, maybe our checks and balances aren't strong enough. Maybe we don't want so much unrestricted power. But my point was a different one. I won't make it again to not bore the audience, but it has nothing to do with presidential power.
Who appoints the bureaucratic heads of those organizations?
The president appoints some of them, but as we know now, what Project 2025 wants to change is taking what are career bureaucrats that are non-political in their public-facing roles and actually make them even more of them political appointees. So it sounds like what you're advocating for, if I understand correctly, is going the opposite way of what Trump and Heritage and Project 2025 have said they want to do. If I understand correctly, I'm sure you denounce Project 2025 on that basis, right?
I'm confused as to what it is that you're suggesting Project 2025 has to do with my question regarding the administrative state.
I see the disconnect here. I see why there's a breakdown of communication. Tony, what you may, if you're not familiar with David Pakman, he brings up things in conversations about one topic that have nothing to do with the topic at hand. So the answer to your question is, what does Project 2025 have to do with all of this? Absolutely nothing. All David's really good for is being a mouthpiece of every exact talking point of the left, progressive, liberal cult. So when you're talking to him, you have to take everything with a grain of salt because he never debates in good faith. And I actually now can't stand the term debate in good faith because David Pakman's ruined it for me, because he accuses people of it all the time, which is about the most ironic thing I've ever heard in my life. But I do want to see how David Pakman weasels his way, or tries to weasel his way out of his non-argument right now. So let's get back to the video, then I'll wrap up with a couple comments.
Appointed by the President of the United States.
I'm confused as to why you don't think that taking the institutions that we have, which you say are already too politicized, and saying let's replace the career bureaucrats with overtly political actors, how that gets us any closer to the scenario you're drawing up.
I didn't say replace bureaucrats with different bureaucrats. I said reduce the number of bureaucrats. I don't know where you're getting like that I'm throwing down the Uno wild card and just changing the color of the bureaucrats. That's not it at all. I suggested that the administrative state, the Bismarckian progressivism that failed in Germany, is failing in the United States. And that by suggesting that the sciences are necessary, that anthropologically, psychologically, sociologically, that as society grows, we need to delegate authority, is very, very weird and strangely 20th century dystopian.
All right, guys, we're going to go back to the calls. Mike is in Old Township, New Jersey, Democrat. Hi, Mike.
Well, Tony, you've been now baptized into the David Pakman world of nonsense. So David either wasn't listening or was intentionally being, as I said, disingenuous. If you guys heard at any point in this conversation Tony say anything about adding more bureaucrats with politicized bureaucrats, please let me know where I missed it. Reducing the number of bureaucrats is to me 99% of the time the answer. But we want to hear from you. What do you think about this conversation on the education system between David Pakman and Tony Kinnett? Let us know. Anyway, as always, we really appreciate you watching, and we will see you on the next one.